Hello, my name's Ursula Benstead and I'm a psychologist from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm the creator of the Shark Cage Framework. And today I'm going to talk to you about step 1 in the Shark Cage Framework, which is the shark cage metaphor. So I developed this framework to help women to understand how abuse could happen in their lives and that they could in absolutely no way be responsible for abuse in their lives, even if it happened more than once. So you may or may not be aware, but gendered violence, violence against women, is the pandemic that was happening long before coronavirus. So in Australia, 1 woman a week is killed by a man, and this statistic is pretty applicable around the world. And so because of a whole lot of factors, gender inequality and rigid sort of gender stereotypes being some of the main drivers of gendered violence, a whole host of factors, this is a reality that just by nature of being a girl or a woman, you are at risk of experiencing abuse. So when women would come to me and they would say, well, you know what, Ursula? I'm thinking that this must be my fault. I'm thinking that somehow I've got some, tattoo on my forehead that's saying, come and abuse me. Because this hasn't just happened once. I've had 3 men in my life who have abused me. So I'm the common denominator. So this is where I felt like, I had to come up with something that was simple and engaging that helped women to understand that they were never ever to blame for abuse they'd experienced in their life. So what I would say to a woman who was saying, it must be my fault, I must be to blame, I would say, well, hang on a minute. I want you to understand that you can never be to blame for abuse in your life. And I want you just to listen for a moment and consider another way of looking at this. I want you just to imagine that the world is like a big, beautiful ocean and there's lots of colourful, friendly fish and dolphins, but there's also a lot of sharks in this ocean, and they are dangerous. So what this can mean is you can just be swimming around, minding your own business, and because of the sheer numbers, you're going to bump up against sharks. So sometimes what can make the difference between whether a shark gets an opportunity to have a second or third interaction with you is whether or not you have a strong shark cage of human rights around you. So this is often where women would say, well, what is a shark cage of human rights and where do I get one? And this is the tricky thing, because it is something that's external to us. It's something that people have to create for us in our childhood. So we come into the world without shark cages and we're all born equal, and it's up to our caregivers and communities and world leaders and messages we receive in the media and our peers to help us to build a shark cage of human rights. And people do this by how they treat us, the sort of messages they give us about who we are and what it means to be a girl or a woman in the world. So if you happen to have had a shark in your life, perhaps your father was violent to your mother, perhaps you had a grandfather who was sexually assaulting you, then what this can mean is that works against the building of a strong shark cage of human rights. So instead of getting messages like, I have a right to be safe, I have a right to decide who touches me, I have a right to be free of sexual assault, actually opposite messages are going in if people are being abusive to you in your childhood. So what this can mean is, as when you're an adult and you go into the world, you will have a shark cage with some bars in it, but you may have some missing bars and some bars that need strengthening. And also your shark cage alarm, which is connected to the bars in the shark cage, which helps us to know when someone's pushing up against one of our rights or boundaries. You could have a shark cage alarm that is glitchy or doesn't doesn't always go off when it should. So our shark cage alarm is like our gut instinct, which helps us to know when someone is disrespecting us or perhaps not a safe person. So the good news is that we're not stuck with the shark cage that was built for us when we were younger. At any time, you can renovate your shark cage. You can have a look at what bars and human rights and boundaries you already have that are strong in your shark cage, and you can decide what new bars you'd like to put in your shark cage and which ones you'd like to strengthen. So it's good to do this work with someone who's been trained by me in the shark cage framework, but you can also visit my website and you'll find some tools where you'll be able to perhaps begin this work yourself. But I always recommend doing this work with a counsellor. And sometimes women will say to me, well, that does make a lot of sense, and I can begin to see how it's not my fault. And that's the message I really want you to take away today, is that only sharks are responsible for their abusive behavior. They are 100% responsible. You are not at all responsible in any way for the behavior, the abusive behavior of sharks. Sometimes it helps if I tell a little bit of a story that illustrates the difference that a strong shark cage can make. So I want you to imagine that there's two girls in a bar, and at one end of the bar we've got Sally. Now Sally was really fortunate. It's nothing she did. She was just very fortunate. She had, her dad was a dolphin, someone who behaves in respectful ways towards other people and supports their rights. And her mum had a very strong shark cage of rights herself. So she was able to help Sally to build a strong shark cage of her rights. And even though there was sharks swimming around in Sally's life when she was younger, because remember there's sharks everywhere, she was fortunate enough that a shark wasn't able to get his teeth into her. So she's got a pretty strong shark cage, and she's got a good alarm system connected to this shark cage, which lets her know when someone's pushing up against one of these rights or boundaries. So at the other end of the bar, we've got Chantel. Now Chantel, through no fault of her own, she wasn't so fortunate. So her mum is one of the 1 in 5 women who has an abusive partner. So Chantel has experienced family violence, physical and verbal and emotional abuse from her father, and has watched her father physically and emotionally abuse her mother for a very long time. And also Chantel's grandfather has sexually abused her in her childhood. So what this means is that this worked against strong bars and rights, like I have a right to be safe, I have a right to decide who touches me. These bars have not been strongly cemented into Chantel's shark cage because of the experiences she's had in her childhood. So what this has meant is that now she's got some gaps in her shark cage and some weak bars. So in this bar, there's a shark, and he looks up, and first of all he sees Sally, and he thinks, I'd like a bit of that. So he goes up to the bar person and he says, "Oh, Madurian lemonade for the sexy chick over there, please." And then he saunters over to Sally and he puts his arm round her and says, "Nice set of tits you got there, love. And how about you and me? You drink up your Madurian lemonade, and maybe then we go back to my place, watch a bit of Top Gear, have some Maccas." And he pinches her on the bum, says, "What do you reckon?" Now, Sally is almost deafened by the noise that her shark cage alarm is making. Now, I want you to have a little bit of a think about what has set off her shark cage alarm. So what particular bars or rights in her shark cage has this man pushed up against that has informed her, let her know that he is not safe? So if we think about it, right from the very beginning, he has ordered her a drink without consulting her, and he's decided what drink she wants without consulting her. So what this means is he's pushed up against the right in her shark cage, which is, I have a right to be involved in decisions that affect me. So that's one bar that he's pushed up against. Then he's gone over and he's touched her physically. So that's pushed up against the bar of I have a right to personal space, I have a right to decide who touches me. And then he's sexually objectified her by talking about her body in a sexual way. So that's pushed up against the right that I have a right not to be sexually objectified. And then he's actually sexually assaulted her by pinching her on her bottom. So that, of course, is I have a right to be safe from sexual assault. So he's then gone on to make a decision about what she's doing that evening, saying, okay, you can come back to my place, we're going to do this. So again, that's banging up against the right. That is, I have a right to be involved in decisions made about me. So it's a dead giveaway that he actually doesn't care about what Sally wants, needs, or likes, because he hasn't asked her, what do you want to drink? What might you like to drink? Would you like to go out with me? Would you mind if I sat down and spoke to you? Would you like to go out with me this evening? What might you like to do? What might you like to eat? He doesn't care about these things. He only cares about getting what he wants. So Sally's shark cage alarm has given her all this information. So then she's able to push the drink away and say, I don't think so. So the shark's pretty pissed off, but they're in a public place and there's not a lot he can do. So he might say something like, oh, you're an effing ugly anyway. And but the important thing is that he swims away. So he swims away, goes back to his table, stares down into his beer. He's feeling a bit sulky. But then he looks up and he notices Chantel and he thinks, I'll have a crack at that. So he goes up to the bar, goes through the same routine. He thinks, oh, I might switch it up a bit. So he's like, I'll have fluffy duck for the gorgeous lady over there, please. And then he goes up to Chantel and he puts his arm around her. He makes a comment about her breasts. He pinches her on the bum and says, how about it? You drink, you and me, back to my place, watch some soccer, get some pizza. Come on, love, come on. And what do you think might be happening for Chantel with her shark cage, which doesn't have as many bars in it as Sally's does, and her alarm system is a bit glitchy? So Chantel's shark cage doesn't register all of these breaches that Sally's did. So she may have an uncomfortable feeling in her stomach, but she shuts it down quickly because that's what she's learnt to do. Because in order to survive in childhood, she learned that it wasn't safe for her to express when she felt uncomfortable. So she shuts it down, and she may even feel a little flattered from the attention because the men in her life as she's grown up and the sexual assault that she experienced when she was a child, they've given her messages like, your value is in how sexually attractive you are to men. You are not innately valuable as a person or valuable for anything else you can offer. So she's also been taught that she doesn't have a right to say no. So this may mean that she goes out with this man. And it may mean that he then knows where she lives and he turns up the next day with all his belongings in bags and says, my flatmate's kicked me out, I'm going to have to stay at yours. And he might then move himself in. And then his abuse may escalate. He may refuse to wear condoms, coerce her into sex, start punching walls, throwing things, making her feel frightened, like it's not safe for her to leave the relationship or to speak up. He may start restricting her access to money. So what I say to women when I tell them this story is, or what I ask them is, do you think that Chantel is responsible for that abuse that she's experienced in her life? And what do you think? Of course she's not. She did not go looking for that shark in her life. She didn't ask for abuse in her life. That shark in her life is 100% responsible for the abuse that he's perpetrated against Chantel. So What the good news is that you can renovate your shark cage at any time. So Chantel can go on to renovate her shark cage and recalibrate her alarm system so it picks up when people are pushing up against boundaries and bars in the shark cage. So that's just giving you a bit of an idea of the shark cage metaphor. There's also an animation that you'll find on my website. So I hope that's been helpful today. And please do visit thesharkcage.com if you want to know more about the shark cage framework. Thank you.